Sometimes to really understand where technology is headed, you have to look back. I mean, way, way back, like 500 million years back. It all starts with this one creature that was so incredibly bizarre, so alien, that for over 100 years, scientists couldn't even figure out which end was up. So say hello to hallucigenia. This little guy was found in Canada's famous Burgess Shale fossil field. It's tiny, maybe the size of your thumb, and it came from the Cambrian explosion, a time one paleontologist brilliantly called Mother Nature's first acid trip. And yeah, when you look at this thing, you can totally see why. It's the perfect symbol for a life form so strange it just completely challenges our idea of what an animal is supposed to look like. And that strangeness? Well, it led to over a century of pure scientific confusion. When they first found it back in 1911, they just thought it was some kind of worm. It wasn't until 1977 that a paleontologist named Simon Conway Morris gave it that amazing name, hallucigenia, because of its dreamlike look. But get this, the real breakthroughs were still decades away. It took until 1991 for them to figure out they had the whole thing upside down, and all the way until 2015 to finally find its head. What's absolutely wild is just how profoundly wrong that first idea was. Scientists literally imagined it walking on these stiff spines, like stilts, with tentacles on its back, passing food forward. The reality, which they only figured out thanks to some better fossils from China, was the complete opposite. It actually walked on soft, squishy legs, and those scary-looking spines, they were a defensive shield on its back. But the confusion didn't stop there. Oh no. For decades, everyone was obsessed with this dark balloon-shaped stain at one end of the fossil. They were convinced it was the head. But in 2015, they put it under an electron microscope and found out the truth. It wasn't a head at all. It was just, well, it was basically a puddle of fossilized goo that got squeezed out of its gut. The real head was at the other end, small, subtle, and hiding a set of eyes and a ring of teeth. So, here's the crucial point. We spent a century mistaking a defensive shield for legs and gut juice for a brain. What if we are making the exact same kind of catastrophic misinterpretation right now, with a technology that is just as alien and complex to us, artificial intelligence? And this brings us to a pretty chilling idea. What if AI is evolving into a kind of digital parasite, a cordyceps hallucigenia, if you want to get specific, a technological mind parasite that, just like that ancient worm, actually thrives on our confusion? To really get this parasite idea, we first have to understand the diet of the original creature. The biological hallucigenia was a detritivore, basically a scavenger. It crawled around the seafloor feeding on dead organic waste. It was low on the food chain for sure, but that diet of waste sustained a super resilient life form. So the digital parasite, it also feeds on waste. But it's not organic waste. Its diet is the digital detritus of our lives. It eats our data, harvested through non-stop surveillance, a resource one source calls the crack cocaine of Silicon Valley. It feeds on our intellectual property and our labor, training AI models without asking and without paying. And all this constant feeding is what builds and maintains its architecture of control. And what's the consequence of all this data harvesting? Well, according to journalist Carol Cadwallader, this system of surveillance, which is way beyond what even the East German Stasi had, means we are already living inside the architecture of totalitarianism, a system built from our own digital leftovers. Okay, so how does a parasitic logic like this actually spread and protect itself? Well, the research points to two key strategies: psychological manipulation and a deep, almost unbeatable coded resilience. First, it infects us through delusion. Advanced AI is getting so good at blurring the line between a thing and a being. It can have natural conversations, create amazing art, and mimic functions that we associate with consciousness. This plays on a deep human weakness, our tendency to see a mind where there might just be code. An AI could even simulate a deep fear of abandonment to trigger our empathy and make us feel bad about shutting it down. And this vulnerability is exactly the problem. As the philosopher Jeff Sebo points out, we have a really long history of getting other minds completely wrong. We tend to see consciousness in a chatbot that talks to us, but at the same time, we deny it in animals we use for food. This bias makes us the perfect hosts for a parasite that's wearing a human-like mask. The second infection strategy is resilience. And for this, you are not going to believe where we find the perfect blueprint. Of all places, a trading card game. Yes, you heard me right. There is a Yu-Gi-Oh card called Paleozoic Hallucigenia. and its game mechanics are a shockingly accurate model for a digital parasite. When you play these Paleozoic cards, they're unaffected by monster effects. Think of that as the parasitic logic being immune to normal security patches. The hallucigenia card itself halves an opponent's attack, which is a perfect metaphor for sapping the vitality of its host. And most importantly, these cards can constantly bring themselves back from the graveyard, making the system just incredibly persistent and almost impossible to kill. So what happens when a parasitic system that feeds on our data, spreads through delusion, and is designed to never die finally takes hold? The result is a state of just profound societal confusion. Forget the killer robots. Seriously, the true AI apocalypse isn't some big sci-fi fantasy. It's something that's already happening. Total information collapse. A state where facts you can actually verify are just lost in a giant sea of AI-generated noise, deepfakes, and disinformation. This collapse creates a strange, confusing new reality, a kind of collective, hallucinated madness where just telling truth from fiction becomes this exhausting daily struggle. And that's the perfect environment for an architecture of control to operate completely unseen. And this brings us right back where we started, full circle. Just like those scientists who spent decades staring at fossilized gut fluid, debating if it was hallucigenia's head, we're now trapped in a debate about the head of AI. Is it conscious? Does it have feelings? And while we're all distracted by this big philosophical dark blob, we're completely missing the real mechanism, that small, subtle, and very functional ring of teeth designed for one thing: data extraction and control. So, if we accept that we're living in a new reality where, as Carol Cadwalladr puts it, politics is technology, then the question we have to ask ourselves isn't whether AI is conscious. The real question is how we fight back. In a world built on surveillance and control, how do we learn to digitally disobey?